Hey, welcome to tonight's Next Left Turn. Now, we saw a fantastic finish at Atlanta Motor Speedway today, but let me tell you about one thing really quick, and that's home field. Dropped some awesome Hendrick Motorsports gear that you're going to want to check out. So you're going to when you check the stuff out, it's Jimmy Johnston, 7-time champion, Jeff Gordon, freaking NASCAR legend, Tim Richardson, another NASCAR legend. Make sure you check it out. Use our code all caps Variety Sports. You get 15% off your first purchase. But I'm not your host of tonight's show. I'm going to hand that over to Josh. He's going to talk about the latest NASCAR race 2 of the season at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Hey, thanks, Brandon. And boogity, let's go racing. And tribute to Darrell Waltrip, back in the day when they were on Fox all the time. He was one of the main guys. Guys, they were in Atlanta this week for the Am Better Health 400. And oh, my God. Maybe one of the best super speedway races I've ever watched is all I have to say. I mean, this thing was bump and go the whole time. Fast passes, slipping, sliding, dipping, diving in and out, up and down the track, left and right. There were 10 accidents in this race. There's plenty of action to cover. Let's get to it right now. I watched the pre-race, all the little coverage there today. I wanted to make sure I was in the zone. I felt like I let you guys down a little bit with Daytona. But the theme of this race, to me, listening to the drivers, listening to the teams, listening to the commentators, it was, what are you setting up for? Are you setting up for handling to get through the field? Or are you setting up for speed just to outpace everybody? And honestly, it was all the cars that qualified up front. They were all like, speed, we'll just deal with the handling as it comes. We'd rather be a little loose and be fast. We'll deal with that. And then you had all the guys who started in the middle of the field and worked their way to the back. They were like, hey, with the way this track is, we're set up for handling because we know that we got to be able to get through the field because you're going to lose track position throughout this race because of the way this track drafts. So that was a big theme for today's race. All the teams were kind of all over the place on it. The drivers seemed to be all over the place on it. And a lot of the guys answered simply as, we'll just have to see if we made the right decision. Well, let's get into the race. From the get-go, started the green flag. I mean, it is literally bumping and grinding from the start-finish line right off the bat. Lots of bumping and pushing to start the race. We don't even make it 2 full laps around the track and we get our first accident. And oh my gosh, it's a record accident. We're talking 16 cars piled up in this accident. It was insane. So let me give you a quick little bit of rundown of how this one went down. All right, here we go. So McDowell started on the pole. Joey Logano on the outside. They just switched their starting positions from the Daytona 500. Oh, hold on. Joey Logano qualified second, but because he got an equipment violation, he had to start in the back of the field. This actually works to his advantage. So we get here, and it's lap 2, 16-car pile up. I mean, they were everywhere, just guys getting taken out everywhere. The best part about this accident was we didn't lose any drivers for the race right out of this accident. There was just a lot of damage. But by the end of the race, there were only like 7 cars that weren't involved in any accidents throughout the whole race. So you had a bunch of guys get tied up. While this accident occurred, like I said, Joey Logano had to stop off on pit road for a stop-and-go penalty. But because this accident occurred as they crossed the start-finish line for lap 2, Logano was already obviously behind the pack, but he was on pit row, so he didn't have to deal and navigate his way around this accident, which actually – by the time they came to lap 8, he was sitting in second or 20th place, and he was back on the lead lap because he was going to go down a lap for as quick as this track runs during this penalty. I mean, everybody's in this. There's a bunch of guys in this wreck, so I can't go through that whole list because I don't want to keep you guys here all night. But after the restart, it was the Kyle and Kyle show. It was Larson and Busch back and forth, just bumping, drafting, just sliding back for each other, riding the outside, riding the inside, dipping and slipping each other. Then we get our second caution on lap 25. It's Chris Buescher, spins out, coming out of turn 4. He didn't really hit anybody. He didn't make any contact with the wall, so it was a good accident, I guess. 25 laps in. Obviously, cars are going to come in down pit lane, refuel. Some guys got tires. Most guys didn't. It was really just top off fuel and get back out there to kind of help set the pace for stage 2. Carson Hocefer did end up lap down after that first accident because he was involved in it. He got the free pass. And during that second caution, because Chase Elliott was collected in the first accident, he spent extensive time making multiple trips down to his pit box to work on that car. If you didn't see the race, not to be a spoiler, Elliott did run the majority of the race. His pit crew was amazing today. They did everything they could to keep that car competitive, running fast, the damage it took in the first accident. Again, we restart after the second caution. Everything's pretty honky-dory. Again, a lot of bumping, a lot of rubbing. Every restart seemed like this. The cars got really, really close together. You had your front two cars, and then your cars right behind those two were basically on the bumper the whole way until they got into turn one. And then you saw a little bit of drift, and you saw a little bit of gap between the cars behind that for the most part. But I mean, I don't think I've ever paid enough attention, or I've never seen it be like this way. But every single restart, I mean, yeah, they're always close, but it was almost like the cars that were behind the starting cars were pushing them across the start-finish line. It was insane, and that's what caused a lot of the cars getting loose right off the restarts. Practices need to come back to super speedways. You're right, and I think that's something that did affect this race, especially with the new layout. And they've only been on it. I think this is the fourth or fifth time. They didn't have any practices. I think they had one practice lap. Or they had two practice laps yesterday, and that was for the new pit road that changed. So I didn't cover this earlier because it's in my notes for later because that's when it kind of played a role in the race. But for this race, after the July race last year, I believe, they changed your pit road entrance. So instead of your pit road entrance being off turn 4 coming down the front stretch, your pit road entrance actually starts at the turn 3 entrance. And it's 90 miles an hour all the way around turn 3 through turn 4. And then once you get to the previous pit lane entrance, it drops to 45 miles per hour. So I know they did get a couple test laps with that in practice, but that was really it. Lap 52 comes around, so we're still in stage 1 because stage 1 was 60 laps. Denny Hamlin takes a spin. It's a one-car accident, no contact, no damage received. Hamlin does get bumped. It's really more of a kiss from Kyle Busch here. He just comes. I mean, it's the slightest. And with these cars, the way they are now, you take that air off of that front air dam or the rear spoiler, which was talked a lot about a lot in this race by the commentators. These cars have a tendency to just get loose and spin on the super speedways. And to address that a little bit more in depth right now, for the super speedways, these next gen cars, they're running a 7-inch tall spoiler. So what's happening when the air comes over the car? So you come over the hood, come up the glass, come over the top of the car, come down the back, but you're hitting this 7-inch tall spoiler. What it's doing is popping the air up real high and making a big, I don't know what the proper scientific term is, but I'd call it a window for the car behind them to very easily sneak up into that hole and push them and give them that bump, which is why I think with these new cars, or at least to my understanding from listening for 2 weeks, while we're seeing so much of this bump draft and why the car behind the lead car can get that run so easily now, it's definitely making NASCAR very exciting on the super speedways. I've never enjoyed back-to-back super speedway races. We don't typically see them, especially in the start of the season. I think the last time it happened was in the early 90s, like 94. And I don't even think that was in the beginning of the season. I think that was in the end of the season, actually. That's neither here nor there. I've never really been a big fan of super speedway racing. With this new car, it is getting really interesting to watch these cars run. But like I was saying, with the 7-inch spoiler, there's a big pocket so cars can get a lot closer. Where this track was 1.5 miles. Next week, they're going to be on a 1.5 mile track. But because it's not a super speedway, they're only going to be running a 4-inch spoiler, which is going to take away a lot of that draft. So that 7-inch spoiler that they have on the back of these cars provides 30% more downforce, making the back end of that car stick so they can have more power. But obviously, it's going to cause more drag down the straightaways. So that's where, going back to the start of the theme of the race, it was speed versus handling. What do you need more? That downforce is going to give you more handling, but it's going to take away a little bit of your speed. So, like I said, with all those things taken into consideration with the front splitter and the taller spoiler on the back of the car, that little kiss Kyle Busch gives Hamlin sends him spinning. No big deal, no major damage. Hamlin handles it just fine, rolls down pit lane, gets his new tires. That's the end of stage 1. McDowell wins it, and nothing big goes on. At this point, obviously we're cycling through pit changes. Um, Todd Gilliland, who, by the way, has been running excellent so far this year. I know it's 2 races, small sample size, but this guy looks like a completely different racer than he has in the past. He's running with the big dogs. Last week at Daytona, he set a personal record leading 16 laps. This week, he broke that personal record in the middle of stage 2. He had already led 17 laps from Front Row Motors. And he's really finding his groove, it seems. And maybe this new car is helping out, and maybe his team's starting to figure things out. And they're getting better week in and week out, and every season in and out. Stage 2 was really pretty boring. It was just a lot of back and forth drafting. Again, a lot of bumping. We started seeing some 3-wide racing up and down the back stretches, sometimes in the turns. Not a whole lot of it, but it was a lot of good aggressive racing. Lots of little wiggles where you thought cars were going to maybe end up into the wall or maybe down in the grass with some great saves. It was entertaining racing. Lots of green flag racing there. Lap 135, we got a problem. William Byron and Michael McDowell collide entering the pit lane. So basically what happened here is one of the drivers missed or forgot, however you want to picture it, that during green lap racing, when you go into pit road, it's 90 miles an hour, not 45. Well, 45, somebody checked up, somebody else checked up. McDowell locked up the wheels, and it ended up forcing him left. He ends up touching Byron. They have a little bit of a little thing, but it's not a caution there because they were on the middle of green flag pit stops, and they would just cause mass chaos. So because McDowell and Byron were able to get the car straightened out and moving again, it looked like NASCAR didn't flag it. After the green flag pit stops rotation gets all the way through that whole cycle, there's 20 laps left in stage 2, and Cindric, Logano, and Blaney, the 3 Penske teammates, are leading 1, 2, and 3. The last lap of stage 2 gets very, very interesting. We get a caution involving Logano, who's been up front all day long, Buescher, who's been up front all day long, and Hamlin, who, although he had a spin, had worked himself back up into the front of the pack and was with the leaders. Logano just gets loose. I mean, there's really no explanation for it. You can see that the car, he's going through the turn. Again, that downforce, there's so much downforce on the back of these cars at this track today. The big complaint seems that the guys couldn't get the front wheels to grip and turn. They really had to let off the gas to get the cars to bite and turn, which we know that's normal, but it seemed to affect them at a greater rate in this race than it normally does. But you see Logano just kind of, the car tightens up, he loses control, he slides up, he collects Buescher, him and Buescher go into the wall. Hamlin's coming through the turn, and he's on the outside up next to the wall. He's just got nowhere to go. He runs into him. No major significant damage for Hamlin there. Logano, I thought he was going to be out at it for this. Pit crew is amazing, works on that car, gets him going. He actually ends up finishing the race. Buescher would stay in the race as well. I got another note here about the spoiler, which I think I've already basically covered that, so we won't redo that. Just cover that. Now, Todd Gilliland, again, I mentioned this earlier. He's been excellent in these first 2 races. He had excellent first 2 stages of this race. Another side note at this point in the race, I noticed that penalties were racking up left and right. There were multiple penalties for speeding down pit roads. So that 90 to 45 mile an hour change was obviously messing with the drivers today. They weren't really comfortable with it. But, I mean, there were more penalties I heard about pit road speeding today than I think I've ever heard in a race. Granted, there were a lot of accidents and there was a lot of movement, so it didn't seem to have an overall effect on the majority of the racers who were affected. But you had plenty of penalties also where guys were driving through too many pit boxes, coming into their stalls. So this 90 to 45 thing, I don't know how much of an impact it played. I'll be interested to see what the racers say tomorrow in interviews or what we hear throughout the week heading into the next race. A couple side notes here. This is the most laps Front Row Motorsports has ever led in a race. At that point in the race, they had led 60 laps. And that was, I guess there was 100 laps left at that point. So they were 160 laps in, and they had already led 60. So they had led the majority, a big chunk of the majority as a team of the race. Let's see where we're at now. So we're getting into stage 3. And Kaz Grala This guy, he's a young racer. He's been in the lower leagues in the truck racing for a while, but it's his first year up with the Xfinity Series, the big boys. And he loosens up Kyle Busch, or no, excuse me. He gets loosened up by Kyle Busch. Again, another slight move, just gives him a little bump. But Kaz looks like he's going to for sure wreck this car and take out 5 or 6 others. He saves the car, gets a nice gentle slide down to the apron, locks him up, slide. As the car's coming back up the embankment, he locks the wheels up and slides it back down, avoiding all kinds of major. We could have had another big one, basically. He got himself out of that. But the funny part about this was Kyle Busch spun Gralla here, but he was the guy looking for the lucky dog. So he gets back on the lead lap from the caution he causes. Obviously, that wasn't strategy, but it happened. Logan here says, what happens if I'm on the track and I decide I want to take a right? I'm a rebel by nature. Well, Logan, you're going to tear apart your car, probably cause an accident, and greatly upset the owner. Now, if we're at a road track, you might need to take that right-hand turn. But we'll talk about that later in the season. At this point, stage 3 is happening. The lights are coming on. The sun is starting to set. That makes a real big problem for the drivers turning into turn 1 because that's where the sun sets. And listening to Kevin Harvick on the broadcast, he said that's one of the worst turns to go into when the sun's setting. You just can't see anything. They showed a couple camera shots. It didn't look that bad to me, but even Harvick and Biffle in the box said that the camera shot wasn't doing justice what they were trying to let you know the drivers deal with in that turn. At this point in the start of stage 3, Kyle Busch is a man on a mission. I mean, the guy is driving like a bat out of hell, showing off all the skill he has, making off all the moves. He's passing the cars through the field. He's moving. I mean, he looks fantastic. At this point in the race, I'm thinking he's got a chance to win it. We get our 7th caution on lap 199. What's up, Fat Boy Fadeaway? That's probably Darren over there, my buddy from the 7th inning stretch. But like I said, caution 7 happens. It's lap 199. It's Chase Elliott, the hometown boy from Georgia at his hometown track, goes for a spin after a bit of a kiss and then a bump from Ross Chastain. Lo and behold, Ross always seems to find himself in these situations, and it always seems to be at the end of the race. I love Ross Chastain's tenacity and his ability to go get it. I just wish sometimes he would know when to pull back. But if he did, he wouldn't be the racer he is, and he wouldn't be the guy that fans love to watch race. He's very much an old school. If he sees an opening, he's going to go for it. You know, kind of like in Top Gun, Maverick tells Rooster, if you think you die, don't think, just do. Ross Chastain clearly doesn't always think it out in the racetrack. He sees it and he goes. He pursues aggressively. And that's part of the reason he's one of the better racers in NASCAR right now. Ty Gibbs, in that same accident as Ty Gibbs, also went for a little ride after losing control, trying to avoid the cars in the accident of Chase Elliott. No major damage, but he goes around. Now we're down to about 50 laps left in the race. All cautions to the win. It's on. There's a point where the cars are they're 3 wide all the way around the track, and then they break to 4 wide in the turns, and you're going, oh my God. They're going to wreck. We're going to have another big one. There's only going to be 10 cars across the finish line at the end. Well, that didn't happen. These guys raced phenomenally. 3 wide and 4 wide, multiple laps, all the way around the track. I mean, it was so much fun to watch. I mean, guys, I can't do it justice describing it here on the podcast and the show, but the cars were just moving. It looked like something out of a video game. And these new cars just draft so well at the high speeds. They really are. It's better than what restrictor plate racing ever was, at least in my opinion. It's fun to watch super speedway racing again, and it's weird for me to say that because I'm a short track guy. Like, give me Bristol, give me Martinsville, give me any of the old school small tracks where rubbin's racing and nobody comes out of the race clean. That's the racing I love most. But good God, this was fantastic super speedway racing today. Let me see here. Todd Gilliland, again, I've said it 3 times already. He had a great race. At this point, he's still in the race, and he's still trucking. So with 42 laps left, we get another caution. It's the 8th caution of the race. It's not a big one, but we're getting up there in the count. It's Brad Keselowski gets a little loose. He slides into the wall. He collects Kyle Larson and Corey LaJoie, who Corey LaJoie we know is really he's really found his own when it comes to super speedway races. He's always there at Daytona. He's typically there at Talladega. He's there at Atlanta. I mean, he seems to be a super speedway racer. He doesn't collect a lot of damage. He still has a really good finish, to be honest, but he does get tied up in that little I don't want to call it. I mean, it was an accident, little crash, little accident. It wasn't that bad. We're working our way down to the end of the race, and this finish was phenomenal, guys. The finish was something out of the movie, and that's the only way to put it. It was a movie script finish end. But before we get there, a couple other notes I gotta let you in on. Briscoe, man, Briscoe 14 car, he was fast today. He was so fast, but his problem was every time he get into a turn, he'd slide up the track, and he'd get loose and he'd fall back. But he'd catch back up because he was so fast on the straight when he was entering the turns. He was dangerous because he was so quick entering. But it bit him. It bit him at one point. And his overdriving into the turns actually caused the 9th caution with 20 laps left. He takes Hamlin out of contention for the win. And Hamlin was around all day. I mean, he'd spun out. He'd been in a couple dingers. His car was a little beat up, but he was still staying in front, and he was in contention. But Briscoe's driving hard, loses control, slides up, takes out Hamlin, takes him out of contention for the rest of the race. This accident was bad enough, and there was enough debris on the track, and NASCAR wanted to make sure they had a good end. This is where they drop a red flag. We get through the cleanup. Yellow flag's going. There's 16 laps left. It's Blaney, Cindric, Suarez, who's just kind of been hanging out all day, hasn't really gotten collected in anything. He's made his way through. Just a nice, quiet race for him. Cindric, again, he's been staying up with the Penske cars all day long up top. Ran a very clean race, very efficient, a little aggressive at times, a little more aggressive at times than I would like to see out of him, being that he's still rather young. But he ran a very, very good race. But anyways, Blaney, Cindric, Suarez, and Kyle Busch lead the field in turn 1 on the restart. And Blaney gets out front and takes the lead. We get 6 laps through. No, we get a few more than 6 laps through. Hold on, it's 260. No, we get 3 laps in. My apologies. My math's off. It's late. We get our 10th caution on lap 249. Cindric is running, and he has to check up going into the turn because he's just losing. The tires are starting to wear on him. He checks up a little bit. He falls back. Wallace gets loose, and Wallace ends up bumping into Barry. Barry goes for a spin. Josh Berry, again, rookie year this year, driving for Stewart-Haas Racing. Had a very good year filling in for Chase Elliott last year and was very good in the Busch series. I still call it the Busch series. Like I don't like the new names. I think they're dumb. I'm sorry. I'm old school. But anyways, this is 3-wide racing in Atlanta. This is what happens. It's always a risk in these turns at these speeds. But when you're down to this point in the race, you got to go for it. And if you think you got it, you got to go make the move. And this is just good old super speedway racing. 3-wide into the turns of Atlanta are always a risk, but less than 15 laps, you got to do what you got to do. Chase Elliott goes for another spin. It just wasn't his day. I mean, with as many times as he got collected, nicked, or spun out, he kept driving and stayed on the track, but it just wasn't his day. Barry's car cut down after he got collected and gave Carson Hocevar quite the impact. Because as you see, Barry's car comes down, Hocevar's car comes up. Both front wheels and the right rear all come off the ground. I mean, it looked like a real hard hit, and he just kept the thing driving straight. I was kind of impressed there. Now we're down to like 3 laps left. It's Suarez is starting in first, Blaney's starting in second. Behind them is Busch and Cindric. So I guess the restart's with 5 laps left. Suarez goes to block Blaney. So Suarez gets out front first. He blocks Blaney. Blaney gets around him. Blaney takes the lead. At this point, Blaney is just blocking. He almost looks as good as Ross Chastain did blocking last week at Daytona before the big wreck at the end. I mean, he's moving back and forth, blocking Suarez, blocking Busch, blocking Suarez, blocking Busch. Fantastic racing for 3 laps. I mean, it is phenomenal. All the cars stack up 3 wide here in the last lap. And I mean, they're just hauling They are just rolling. And they come through, and Bubba Wallace is there, and Cindric's there, and you got Suarez and Busch and Blaney still out front. And in between 3 and 4, in that turn section there, and 3 and 4 coming over to the front stretch, Blaney goes low. Busch, who at one point was sitting in third, which is where you want to be in Atlanta coming to the checkered flag, because usually third can get the runoff 4 and get to the finish line first. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for him this time because Suarez actually ended up sitting in third. But Blaney goes low. Busch is in the middle. Suarez comes roaring up the outside. We're talking 3 wide at the finish line, photo finish, 0.006 seconds between first and third place, 0.003 seconds between first and second. Suarez steals the victory from Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch, who had been fighting all day long for this race. Guys, I cannot explain it enough. I had to stop and look at the TV. I was like, what? Play it back. Play it back. Even with the photo finish, it's that close. It's like this. It's like this much that Suarez beats Blaney across the line first. And just a little bit more than that, you see Busch back behind. Oh my gosh, guys. Fantastic race. Fantastic ending to the Ambetter 400 at Atlanta. I couldn't ask for more at a super speedway. It was awesome. So much fun. It's easily the most fun I've ever had watching a super speedway race on TV. Granted, guys, I grew up in Indianapolis. I've been to IMS more times than I can count watching IRL and NASCAR there. So I've seen big racing. I've been to tracks. But this was something different. I mean, the finish was just fantastic and phenomenal. If every super speedway race was like this, why would we even have short track regular speedways? Just let's see everybody run 200 miles an hour, bump, draft, twist, wreck, and cut turns at 180 miles an hour nonstop. Fantastic race. This was a better race than the Daytona 500 by far. This is going to go down as probably the best finish of the season, and it's race number 2, which is disappointing because it means it's going to be hard to find something that lives up to the hype the rest of the way. But fantastic race. It was a lot of fun to watch. I took so many notes. I didn't have a lot of time to prep for next week's race, but I do got a couple other stats I want to give you before we head out of here. So there were a couple other records that happened during this race. Number of lead changes, 48. You had 48 lead changes in 400 miles. You had 10 cautions for a total of 65 laps. The race took 3 hours and 28 minutes. The average speed was 115.398 miles per hour. The margin of victory was 0.003 seconds, like I earlier mentioned. This is something I've never paid attention to, so I find it very interesting. I'm going to watch it the rest of the season. The number of green flag passes in this race was 6,536. That's 33 and a half passes per lap. I don't know if that's high or not. I've never looked. I've never paid attention. But I can tell you by the end of the season, I'm going to let you guys know if that's a lot of passes per lap. I feel like it is. So those are a couple things I want to let you guys in on. I want to give you guys the full rundown real quick so you know who won, where everybody finished. Want to make sure we get your favorite driver included here. So here's I'm guessing it's official now because I don't see official unofficial racing. So the winner was Daniel Suarez in the number 99 Chevy. Ryan Blaney, the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion, finished second. Kyle Busch in third. Austin Cindric got fourth. Bubba Wallace with another fifth place finish to start the season. Bubba Wallace is becoming a real threat in the super speedways, guys, and even in the speedways, and sometimes the short track he's there. Bubba Wallace, if he matures and keeps his head in the game, may be a revolutionary piece to the future of NASCAR. His driving style is a little different. He's got his personality is different. And like in the WWE where you have bad guys or heels, Bubba Wallace can be a great heel for NASCAR. Just going to put it out there. After Bubba Wallace, We had Ricky Stenhouse with another top 10 finish at a super speedway. Ross Chastain, after all the trouble he got in all day, finished with 7th. Michael McDowell had a fantastic car. Got into some trouble there in the back half of the race. Comes out with a top 10 and finishes 8th. Chris Buescher finishes 9th. Ty Gibbs 10th. Harrison Burton 11th. Martin Truex Jr. still can't get that super speedway win. Finishes 12th. Corey LaJoie salvages a 13th place finish today. Kaz Gralla, 14th. Chase Elliott, 15th. Ryan Preece in the 41 car for Stuart Haas finished 16th. William Byron finished 17th. Daniel Hemrick, 18th. Carson Hocevar, 19th. Justin Haley finishes out the top 20. John Hunter Nemechek was 21st. Austin Dillon, 22nd. Denny Hamlin finished 23rd. BJ McLeod finished 24th. Eric Jones, 25th. Todd Gilliland had such a great race and just didn't work out for the end. I think he got collected there at the end in one of those little spin outs. Dropped him all the way down to 26th. Alex Bowman finished 27th. Joey Logano, 28th. Josh Berry in 29th. Tyler Reddick finished in 30th. Chase Briscoe, 31st. Kyle Larson, 32nd. Brad Keselowski, 33rd. Christopher Bell, 34th. Zane Smith, 35th. Noah Gragson, 36th. And Josh Williams finishing last in 37th place. Yeah, I think Josh Williams got taken out in that first accident. Yeah, I think he was out in that first accident, so he didn't really have much of a day. Let's look forward to next week real quick here, because I don't really know who's on the schedule next week, because I'm not going to lie. I just haven't had time to get there yet. Next week. Oh, we're in Vegas next week, baby. We're going to Vegas. Vegas, fun track to be at. We're looking forward to that one. That one is next Sunday, March 3rd at 2:30 p.m., and it will be on Fox. We'll be with you next week, Sunday night around 9 o'clock, 9:15, give or take. We got lives, we got families, we got kids. We will be here, though, to recap the race. Vegas, man. Vegas is fun, guys. Vegas is a fun track. Again, I think it's 1.5 miles. It's just a regular speedway. Again, it's going to be that 4-inch spoiler, so we're not going to see as much drafting, but these cars are going to be fun to watch there. Guys, Ambetter 400 in Atlanta. Fantastic race. Best race of the season so far. I know there's only been 2 actual races this year, but by far the best finish. By far the most fun racing to watch. Thanks for coming into the Next Left Turn. Join me next week. Come see us Wednesday at 7th Inning Stretch. Follow us at VSN YouTube. Make sure you check out Wrecked with Ranger. Guys, this is the VSN, the Next Left Turn. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much.